Welcome to God's Table Talk, where real-life stories and testimonies of faith are brought to the table. I'm your host, Paul Eck. In this episode, I'll be visiting with Jan Skinner. Now, Jan lived a typical American childhood in the Midwest and grew up in the church. After she graduated high school, she went on to college where she met her future husband, Terry. Then at the age of 22, tragedy struck. Okay, so we're talking with Jan, and your background is really a typical American type story. You had a mom and a dad, and you had a brother, and you went to church, and you just had a normal, typical family, American family. But then when you were a young adult at the age of 22, you dealt with something pretty traumatic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, at the age of 22, Terry and I had just been married 6 months, and I had gotten a phone call. My mom was a school teacher out here at Bismarck, and they said that she had had an accident. And that's pretty much all I needed. I knew at that time I needed to come home. So we came home, and we had stopped on the way home, and I made a phone call in Rolla, and my dad just said, your mom has died. And so from then on, my life changed. It became dark. I was very, very depressed and sad, and just kind of went through the motions. I was a going to be a school teacher, and went on with a job and everything, but just really went through the motions, and it was very rough on our first years of marriage. My husband Terry was a great guy and stood by me, and I'm thankful for that. I couldn't have asked for anything more. Our vows were serious, and but it was rough. It was rough, and then we moved back to Farmington and began our lives. And we attended a layman's retreat one weekend with Nazarene Church at Pinecrest Campground, and Dr. Fine was speaking. I don't exactly remember the dates or anything like that. I was probably in my early 30s, and I knew that I needed something more in my life. I was at rock bottom, you could say, and it was not good. So if you've ever been at rock bottom, you know what that's like. And so Dr. Fine spoke, and it really touched my heart, and it brought me to the altar, and at that time I accepted Lord as my Savior, and I've been moving forward since. I was always in church, but I was raised Lutheran, but the Nazarene Church had something more to offer than what I was used to, and so that's where I ended at that time. After that, we had pastored churches and in and out of church, but always had our Friday night Bible study and always close to the Lord, but not as close as probably we could have been, or I could have been, I should say. I shouldn't speak for both of us. But anyway, so for the last 4 years, since I retired from school teaching and everything, we had started back at the Nazarene Church at Farmington. It was funny because God had been tugging at my heart, and I was thinking about retirement and thinking, we'd have more time for church and so on and so forth. So but I didn't mention anything to Terry. Well, he had been thinking about it as well. So God had been putting it on both of our hearts that maybe we should try to go back. So we did that April. It was, I think we went shortly right after Easter. It was 2017. And so we've been back at the Farmington Nazarene Church since then.
Okay. So, and we should mention that that's the church that I believe Terry grew up in, was it not?
Yes, it was.
And his father and his mother still go there, and you guys go there. I wanted to go back just a little bit. As you look back now as a Christian, back to those 10 to 12 years of darkness from the time your mom passed until you came to the cross, what do you get? Are you able to get good? I mean, are you able to see some good out of it, or to understand it better? Or what do you get from that, or how do you view it?
Well, those are not real happy days. They were just days of putting one foot in front of the other. I will be very honest. I was just kind of blah, whatever. I was not a good mother. I was not a good housewife. At least I feel I wasn't. So those days are kind of blurry, and I've always pushed them back, pushed them down, and I think that there comes a point in one's life that God brings you down till you are so broken that He can come in and fill you again, and that's what's happened in my life.
Okay. Terry, we talked about your husband had a stronger faith than you when you met. Was there anything that he did to try and draw you closer to God, or how did he handle the situation? And for that matter, what was his response when you walked to the altar and gave your life to Jesus?
Well, men, they like to fix things. So, it was very frustrating for him. It took a toll sometimes on our marriage, but we always stuck it out, and God always made a way. And He was always there for me. I think when you're that young, sometimes going through things like that, it's hard to know how to nurture that person or whatever. So we just leaned on God to help us. Forgot where I was going.
It's okay. Well, let's talk about this then. After you got saved, how did that change your marriage? How did it change the complexion of your marriage? You have a son. You and Terry have a son together. Did it change how you mothered? Did it change how your marriage was?
Yes and no. There was that depression of losing my mother in such a tragic way. So I finally sought help, professional help, and that helped a lot. Medicine, doctors, there's nothing wrong with it, and that helped a lot. But I don't know. I guess just since my illness in 17, diagnosed with breast cancer, broken again, brought down to my knees at a more mature age, already back in church with a loving church family and a loving family, that God has changed me, really, really changed me.
And you mentioned the fact that you were diagnosed in 2017. We stepped back, what was it, about a year earlier to that, and your husband, Terry, was facing a serious heart issue. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because you guys are both, I think we're both looking at the end of your careers as teachers, retiring. Mm-hmm. You guys love to travel. You were looking at all that, and sort of God kind of put some things into the road. You went, wait a minute, this is, how did you think that, were you able to help him with what he was dealing with the heart issue before you got diagnosed with cancer?
That, Paul, that is really a good question and something to bring up. When Terry had his heart attack and he was diagnosed with that, and we were facing the bypass surgery, God gave us a peace that, like it says, you just don't understand it. He just gives it, and you accept it and embrace it and move forward. And that is exactly what he did. Yes, I was worried. Yes, I shed tears, and I wondered, why is this going on? Here we are, we're getting ready to retire. But with God's peace, we marched right through it. It was His presence and Him all the way. Same thing with my diagnosis. Yes, I had my pity party just for a little bit. And then we just marched right forward, and God has helped me all the way through.
I know you've talked about, in conversations that we've had, about the fact that there were times where literally, opening your eyes was difficult. Mm-hmm. Were you speaking with God then? Were you what were you doing when you were bedridden because of the cancer?
I did a lot of praying, a lot of praying, and I found myself praying when I didn't even know I was praying. It was, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's something that I went through. I'm thankful for it. I mean, God was there the whole time. I can honestly say that I never was really afraid. I wondered about what was going to happen to me, but he gave me that peace again, and I'm telling you, if I could carry that with me all of the time, I would. But he doesn't give it to you all of the time. He only gives it to you when it's most needed. And yes, he's given it to me twice, and I can't explain it. It's just there. And I didn't fear any of my treatments or anything like that. Every time it came back to treatment time, I was ready to go. I just knew that that's what my plan was.
Now, do you find yourself meeting people that are going through this, or God putting people across your path that you can empathize with because of what you've gone through, whether it was with your mom, with your husband, or with your cancer treatment? Because I've found that God does that. The worst things that happened in our life, we find later on that he actually has us cross paths with people who are going through those things, and we become the helper and become a voice for them.
Oh, yes. That has been one of the best parts of it, I should say. Everywhere I went, and my husband will tell you, people were always willing to, that they would say, honey, I'll be praying for you. I know what you're going through. I've been there. You know, when I was bald or whatever, they say, oh, I love your hair or whatever, and we would be eating out, and somebody would come up and always give us a word of encouragement or pay for our meal. We had that happen a few times. And I would be, wherever I would be, even at the doctor's office or whatever, I would always come across somebody and was able to share my testimony and just exchange some nice, words with each other.
This may be a difficult question, but do you think your faith is stronger because of what you've gone through?
Oh, yes. My faith is a lot stronger. I have a lot of faith and I have a lot of trust. And I am not one to worry so much anymore. I will be honest with you. Yes, I'm supposed to go to a doctor's visit next week and have blood work. There's always a concern, hoping my numbers are good and all that. But I'm just trusting God that they are going to be good and everything is going to be fine.
So as you look back, we won't give your age, but as you look back,
you can. That's
when
okay.
you were 18 years old, and now you're older than that, your vision of what your life would be like at 18? How different is it now that you're not 18?
Well, it is a lot different. I really don't like to think about where I would have been. I was a good girl. I kind of got in a little trouble in college a little bit, but I met Terry, and I had a good friend, and she asked me to make an ultimatum: is it him or is it me? And I chose him, and I think that's the best decision I ever made, was choosing him. And I just don't even know where I would be if I hadn't chose him.
So you're thinking that God put this together. Huh?
Yes, I am.
It's kind of amazing. I always enjoy doing this, looking back, and you think back when you were, I think you and Terry met while you were both 18 and 19 years old at Mineral Area College, that he knew then what Terry was going to need as far as a wife and what you were going to need as a husband, because he knew all these things were going to happen. Does it sometimes put you in awe of just the fact that we don't have control of our lives, and number two is that his plan for our life is amazing?
Yes. I think back about that, and I just, it is, you are in awe. I mean, I've been in awe several times, and when I think about that, yes, and then when I think about, conceiving my son and everything. I'm in awe then and how all this works. And then another time is when I was in awe was when the first time we went to Alaska and I saw those big mountains, and it's like, oh, So yes, it was him, because he is the main person in my life. I mean, that every morning before I get out of bed, it's thanking him for the night's rest and thanking him to wake me to another day to serve him.
The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Psalm 23, 1-3.
My thanks to Jan Skinner for joining me for this episode of God's Table Talk. I hope you enjoyed our visit, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on either Apple, Spotify, or Anchor. You can also watch the interview on YouTube. Join me next time for another episode of God's Table Talk. I'm your host, Paul Leck. Be blessed, but more importantly, be a blessing.